Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, an interesting thing taking place in the AI sphere known as circular financing. We'll get into the details on that. Plus, we'll talk about some of the risks of artificial intelligence in the legal space. Melissa Gott from the Law Group joins us coming up as well. And a good Thursday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget, if you miss any portion of the program, you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand on your own time. It's real simple. Just search for the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our program this morning brought to you by the Law Group here in Wilmington. For any legal questions or challenges, lawgroupnc.com or 910-251-6088. We're going to be talking about AI on the program today. Coming up in the second half of the program, we'll talk about some of the risks and a growing concern. Melissa Gott from the Law Group, one of our great advertisers here on the program, will join us to talk about the concern of individuals starting the legal process exclusively with artificial intelligence and some of the problems that can create going down the road of dealing with a legal matter. She'll join us coming up in the second half of the program. But I wanted to start off with something that I've had on my list, my stack of stories now for a couple of months, and with our ever-evolving, very quickly changing news cycle, unfortunately, a lot of things just don't make the chopping block, just don't have enough time, frankly, within a week to get into all of these stories. But since we're talking about AI today, there's an interesting thing going on as it relates to the financing, all of the money that you are currently seeing in the AI space. If you go to any business website, CNBC, Fox Business, any of these major business publications, on any given day, there are a half a dozen to a dozen stories about these major deals being inked between large and small AI firms, some of them in the tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars that are being inked between all of these companies. It's a significant amount of money in a lot of cases, and the question has been, where is this money coming from and where is it going? There is a phrase that is being used now in the AI sphere called a circular deal. And I caught an article over at Bloomberg a couple of months ago that kicked off this discussion and really outlined exactly what is going on here. And I just want to read through a little bit of the open and then we'll explain. It reads, ChatGPT, which is, of course, the very common app that many folks use, kicked off the AI boom, but it was a landmark partnership between its developer, OpenAI, which is the parent company of ChatGPT, and software giant Microsoft that laid its financial foundations. This playbook has been repeated by the AI community ever since. Cloud computing companies and chip makers, which most prominently would be NVIDIA, among them, have helped to fund leading AI developers, which in turn become some of their largest customers. So what we're talking about is not a Ponzi scheme. It's not a scam. There are circular financing deals that are fraudulent and have been fraudulent. People have gone to prison for a long time over that. That's not what we're talking about, but it's an interesting business model that the many folks within the tech sector are asking, is this sustainable long term? And there's a great flow chart that Bloomberg put out with their article. I have that linked up over at the show notes at patreon.com/Nick Craig that shows this circular model. So for the premise of our conversation today, we're going to call this example company Thing AI. That's going to be our example company that we're going to use. So we start this Thing AI company and we're gaining a little bit of traction. Things are going pretty well. And then a major tech company comes along and says, hey, we want to invest in you. We'll use a company like OpenAI as an example of that. And so we've got this Thing AI service. It's chugging along pretty well. And then OpenAI comes to us and says, hey, we want to invest $200 million into your company. We go, wow, that's great. So OpenAI takes a stake in the company and they give us $200 million. That's how the process works. In return, of course, we are going to spend a significant portion of that $200 million on tokens, or we're going to spend that significant portion of that $200 million on the circular, or spend it on the computing to make our AI model run. Who do we spend that money with? Well, we look at some of the largest players in the AI sector. We're going to spend that money with OpenAI, the same company that just gave us $200 million. And let's say we spend 70% of that money with OpenAI. Now we've created a feedback loop between our Thing AI company and OpenAI. And so then you zoom the picture out a little bit further and you see this going on between OpenAI and companies like Oracle and NVIDIA. OpenAI and Oracle and NVIDIA are all in this same circle. NVIDIA makes the chips, Oracle buys the chips, Oracle and OpenAI invest in each other. And so you've created this feedback loop of money that is all legitimate. It's not a Ponzi scheme. It's not a scam. This is not fake money that is being printed, but it is all being used, or the vast majority of it is all being used internally between just a couple of relatively small firms. OpenAI, Microsoft, Oracle, Google, and NVIDIA. Those are essentially the main players in the AI sector. Even larger or mid-size AI companies, they're not rolling out their own infrastructure. They're renting that infrastructure from companies like Oracle, like Microsoft, like Google. And so when Google then comes in and says, hey, we want to invest in your company, it makes total sense for these major tech firms, right? Because they're making the money. They're investing the money in a firm that's essentially just going to give large portions of it back to them. That's this circular model that has been created in the AI space. And that is why there, I believe, is starting to be some serious questions, not necessarily about artificial intelligence itself, but the very, in my opinion, very propped up market that exists right now. Because the problem that gets created with this circular feedback model is that when these smaller firms that OpenAI and many of these other tech firms have invested into, and I say small, we're still talking about hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars taking place, it can create a major problem when there's a downturn. And Bloomberg writes this in their article saying, so what's the problem? If revenue from AI products does not grow as much or as fast as expected, Company B might find itself staring at untenable bills from data center capacity and hardware. Company A, who invested the money in Company B, loses twice. Company B stops buying its products, the data centers and the infrastructure that it's selling, and its stake in Company B tumbles in value. And so it's a double loss. They're defaulting on their server bills, or they're scaling back dramatically the amount of money that they're giving back to the company that invested in them in the first place. And then the stake that the larger firm took in the smaller company as part of the funding mechanism, as part of the funding model, that begins to erode because obviously the company is not doing well financially. And so it can create very quickly a domino effect in this space where you have so much money flowing around, literally trillions of dollars flowing around in this ecosystem. And if cracks start to show, if revenues start to dip and things start becoming unreliable, I don't think it will be very long before you see a major AI crash, a major AI problem. Great comment coming in on the show. I'm a heavy AI user and I predict a massive crash. And I think that is what a lot of folks are wondering right now in the technology space, in the financial space, as the AI sector continues to grow dramatically and incur a lot of financing from outside sources. Question number one, is this a bubble? And then, of course, the sub question of that 1A would be, if so, how and when does this bubble pop? because many folks are starting to come to the realization that this kind of funding, this insane amount of money that is flowing circularly through the AI sector, is not sustainable long term. That's the big concern. That's the big question that is being asked, and it is starting to show up a little bit more in many of these AI companies, these AI firms across the nation and across the world. We are chatting AI today and this very interesting concept known as circular financing, or a circular deal that is taking place within the AI sector. You have a couple of very large AI firms, a couple of very large AI sectors, companies like Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Oracle that have the physical infrastructure for AI. These are large tech companies. NVIDIA makes a lot of the chips. Microsoft and Oracle purchase a lot of the chips to then sell to companies like OpenAI in terms of leasing or renting the infrastructure. And so you create this big circle in which capital is flowing. Everybody is making plenty of money, but it's all internal money, right? That's a lot of the question that is, or a lot of the concern that I think is that is starting to rise, deals explicitly with that. Because the money is all internal, if some of those money flows start to break, it chops everything off. Because there is this entrenched circle that has been created, and it's causing a little bit of concern, a little bit of alarm within the AI sector as to how long is this sustainable and how long is this practical. Back to this Bloomberg article that describes some of this, it reads in part, "To the supporters of the flurry of the AI mega investments, the circular critique misses a basic point. Building AI is extraordinarily expensive, and the most advanced chips are still hard to get. In that kind of market, companies don't just place orders. They lock in supply by pairing long-term buying commitments with financing. Asset manager Hannes Henderson said the wave of AI deals is more like a vicious circle that helps line up suppliers, builders, and customers to meet the exploding demand for cloud computing." The article goes on to say, the arrangement can also create leverage and more options for AI labs. OpenAI, for example, has been trying to diversify its infrastructure beyond a single vendor, which is currently Microsoft. Now it has to close tie-ups with many of the largest cloud computing providers and chip makers. AI industry leaders have defended these interconnected deals as the right approach to take given the unique challenges of financing a technological revolution. At a summit that happened in December of last year, Anthropic's chief executive officer said, quote, "One player has capital and has an interest because they're selling the chips, and the other party is pretty confident that they'll have the revenue at the right time, but they don't have, for example, $50 billion on hand." And then it translates into this article into the .com and the internet boom that took place in the late 1990s. Bloomberg writes in their piece, "During the internet boom of the late 90s, fiber optic networks were built on the promise of relentless growth. Equipment makers helped to fuel the expansion with vendor financing, loans, and other support that allowed telecommunications service providers to sustain the heavy investments. When demand forecasts fell short and prices for transporting internet data sank, the model broke. Heavily leveraged carriers slashed spending, and some filed for bankruptcy. Much of the capacity sat underused for years as the industry consolidated. As the market softened, some carriers also relied on capacity swaps, selling one another rights to network capacity and recording the transactions as sales. Even when the deals largely washed out because the parties were buying similar capacity from each other, in the early 2000s, U.S. congressional investigators examined the tactics at carriers including Qwest and Global Crossing. Both companies later moved to restate revenues tied to some of those swap deals. One venture capitalist speaking to Bloomberg, who covered networking and communication companies as a technology analyst during that boom, said that the AI capital spending is climbing towards levels last seen at the peak of the late 1990s fiber optic build out. In some cases, he said, the risk is that the facilities using today's semiconductor chips will become obsolete before they've made a return on their investment. And there are a lot of similarities for those that followed and were in the tech boom that went on in the 90s, the telecommunication tech boom. There are a lot of analogies, a lot of analogs that can be drawn from what was going on at that time. And let me be clear, there was a lot of fraudulent stuff going on as it related to that during the 90s. We're not necessarily talking about fraudulent stuff. I'm sure there's a little bit of some level of fraud going on currently in the AI space, but that's not the main premise of this. They have seen and are warning that there could be a lot of parallels between what went on then and what is going on now. Got another comment coming in, a couple of other comments coming in on the program. The unpredictable and ridiculous user pricing structures are the clue. And yeah, we have seen that. Many of these AI companies that previously had offered services for $5, $10, $15, $20 a month have significantly updated their pricing. And that is in large part due to probably some predicted slowdown in the future. And because these companies are so heavily leveraged in a lot of cases, have so much debt, or as I just read through some of the details in the Bloomberg article, have put themselves in a situation where they have committed to investing tens of billions of dollars in the months and years to come. They need to raise revenues, and they can't worry about doing it in 2 or 3 years. They need to raise those revenues now. And so that is one of the other interesting threads of this, one of the other interesting topics of this that is taking place. Comment coming in on X during the program talking about some of this as well, noting that during the AI boom that's going on right now, eventually the capital is going to run out. And that's the issue. Eventually, the capital stops. And because the capital is all flowing internally, again, you've got a circle. Well, what happens when you cut part of the circle out? Well, from a math standpoint, it's no longer a circle. From a geometry standpoint, if you take a portion of the circle away, it is no longer a circle. And very quickly, that entire circle completely collapses and struggles to maintain itself because you've just cut a big chunk out of it. When you've got these flows of money going around consistently and there's a break or a pause or a slash in one of the pieces of that circle, it likely will create a major problem because it's all internal and it's all of the stock or the stock in these much smaller AI firms that companies like Oracle and Microsoft can put on their balance sheet and say, yeah, look at all of the investment that we have in these companies that are generating or predicted to generate X dollars worth of revenue. That doesn't come to fruition. It not only hurts the small company, as I mentioned, it hurts the larger investor, which is another tech company. Bills start getting defaulted on, and I don't think it takes a long time. It could literally happen within the span of a couple of months that you see a normalization within the AI field, within the AI sector. It's a fascinating thing to watch. And we'll be keeping an eye on this. I've got a couple of other articles and things that I'm tracking as this process continues to play out. We'll talk about the risks of AI as many folks have turned to it for legal advice. Melissa Gott from the Law Group joins us coming up here in just a couple of minutes on the Nick Craig Show. Before that, I do want to tell you about the Law Group and thank them for their continued support of the program and remind you that when legal challenges arise, don't put your trust in AI. Put your trust in the Law Group right here in Wilmington. Since 2003, Melissa Gott and her team of experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense, no matter the issue, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures that your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. They're located in downtown Wilmington and just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. That's 910-251-6088, or online at lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate Melissa Gott and her team over at the Law Group for their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. She'll join us coming up here in just a matter of minutes as the Nick Craig Show continues streaming live this Thursday morning, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. We have talked a lot about AI here on the Nick Craig Show. The current conversation going on revolves around data centers and moratoriums that are taking place across a variety of municipalities here in North Carolina. And many folks, myself included, have implemented a lot of these artificial intelligence tools into our daily lives, helping us with a lot of repetitive tasks. There's a lot of great features, but there are some dark sides of AI as well. Joining us on the program today, you've heard her name a lot, Melissa Gott with the Law Group here, our great advertiser on the Nick Craig Show. Melissa, thanks for the time. You've had a couple of posts on your Law Group Facebook page over the last couple of months as individuals have gotten into legal trouble. They've started off the process with AI. Things don't go correctly. No surprise there. Then they reach out to you and your firm. In one of your posts, you said it was too late by the time that the customer had reached out to you. Walk us through what you're seeing in the legal space as it relates to AI. It's got to be fascinating to watch.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me on, Nick. Yes, we've seen so many changes, especially over the past year when it comes to AI. And it's been great for us here at the office. It's kind of like having an associate attorney on the side that can help with some of the more standard drafting documents. But as you mentioned, we recently had a case, and it was a very, very good case. But the problem was that the potential client had filed some pleadings on their own prior to getting us involved, and they hadn't made the correct allegations. They had included some causes of action that actually don't exist in North Carolina, and then they had forgotten to include others, including a claim, a very good claim for revenge porn. By the time they had gotten to us, the statute of limitations had already expired, and so we couldn't pursue the very valuable revenge porn case in this particular circumstance. And so we couldn't go back and help this client. And so it was very, very devastating to the client to realize that she had been victimized. And now, because of the 1 year statute of limitations, she wouldn't be able to pursue her case. So that's something that we're seeing often. And then transitioning over to the other side, the defendant's side, we've seen recently a lot of defendants trying to defend themselves by using AI, which again is great for some simple menial tasks, but it doesn't help you with actually drafting documents according to North Carolina law, according to the deadlines in North Carolina law. And just recently didn't catch a bunch of typos in the pleadings that were filed in a case we're handling out of Mecklenburg County. So we have seen the pros and the cons with AI, but with clients, when it comes to preserving their claims, my goodness, get an attorney involved, even if it's just to ask some basic questions before you proceed pro se.
You mentioned that you're using it in office for some of the stuff that you guys are doing, and it's been essentially like an associate assistant. What are some of the things that you're using it for internally that may not necessarily translate to the broader public or somebody that's facing some legal challenges?
Sure. So, for example, yesterday I was drafting a very complex will provision. And so the client had some very unique situation. And the language that I was using wasn't very clear at all. So I took what I had drafted, I had like a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, dropped it into AI, and I said, please clarify this. And it was wonderful for me because it spit out exactly what I needed to clarify for the client and in the future when that will is interpreted. But again, I knew the law. I knew what words to put into, in this case, ChatGPT. I knew what to put into AI so that it would give me a good product back. But we have had situations here where we tried to allow it to like draft a brief for us, citing case law. And it, as everybody has heard it said, it hallucinated and it created some things that just don't exist here in North Carolina. So you still need that attorney's eye on it just to kind of proof it. Again, like an associate attorney in the office, I'm not just going to file what they have drafted. I'm going to look over it and make sure it complies with North Carolina law. So we use AI in the same way.
Yeah, and I've actually seen this relatively recently as well with all the drama going on in North Carolina's 11th congressional district. I was chatting with ChatGPT about some previous election results. And same thing, Melissa, this is stuff that is well known, just like North Carolina law, that is all published online, should be, at least we assume, relatively easy for these AI chat agents to really decipher. Same thing with election results. And it totally made up results of previous elections with made up candidates in Western North Carolina. And as you noted with the legal stuff, fortunately, you're able to look back through that as somebody that has been in the legal profession now for quite some time. Same thing with what I'm doing in the political space, but this is obviously a big concern when you've got the layman that is trying to deal with a variety of different legal challenges, can't decipher or determine whether something is correct or incorrect, and then it leads them down this essentially wild goose chase with no real conclusion.
Yes, it's like I said with that previous example, it's just very sad. And so, for situations where somebody actually does have a legitimate claim, it's always good to consult with an attorney, even if they don't hire an attorney in the end, just to get some initial guidance so that they can go off on their own and file something pro se. Because there are causes of action here in North Carolina that are fairly standard. We have the Administrative Office of the Courts that have standard forms for people to be able to handle certain matters down at the courthouse. And I'm all for that. If you can save the money and not employ an attorney, great. But there are certain circumstances where you're going to have an attorney involved, such as in, digital harm cases, the revenge porn cases.
Yeah, let's get into that. We are joined here on the Nick Craig Show by Melissa Gott, an attorney and the founder over at The Law Group, our great advertiser here on the program. You and I have been texting over the last couple of weeks about this revenge porn case and what's going on there. Can you first lay out for our audience what this term revenge porn is? I can't imagine that necessarily everybody has heard that. And then there's an AI element of this as well.
Yes, exactly. So it's referred to as like digital harm, revenge porn, extortion, things like that. And so we've seen it most recently in cases where like they've broken up in a relationship and they had shared intimate images of themselves with their significant other. And then after they break up, that significant other will post them online or share them with friends or text message them to the spouse's children. So just really bad circumstances like that. And in North Carolina, there's a statute that allows criminal charges to be made, but also the victim is entitled to monetary damages. And those monetary damages are based upon the number of images that are published and the number of days that they are published, and then how many people to whom they're published. So we're coming up now on 2 years. 2 years ago, we got a verdict for over $30 million for a young lady, and she was a young student. She's a delightful young person, very resilient. She's actually going to law school this fall because she wants to help other people. And in that case, her ex had posted online on Reddit and also on social media. And so for every day that those images were running online, she was entitled to recovery. So of course there are challenges with these cases. We got a $30 million judgment. That's wonderful, great for her. But now it's on the collection side of it, where we actually have to seek those monetary damages from the defendant. We're also seeing a new type of digital harm, and that's using AI. So the statute addresses this as well. So that means in the event that somebody has an image, like let's say it's your ex-girlfriend, you can take your ex-girlfriend's head, attach it to an AI image. And if that AI image is performing any sort of sexual acts or has nudity or anything like that, intimate details, that AI image can justify criminal and monetary damages as well. So AI is being used for good things. Here in the office, you're using it for checking results and things like that. But it's also used for those bad things where perpetrators are actually creating images and using those. So we always tell our clients for tips on this. First of all, don't ever share an intimate image. I mean, obviously that's not going to help you with AI generated ones. But if somebody is a victim, report it to the police immediately. The police are really good at seizing the actual evidence and preserving it. That way for later on criminal charges or civil charges. And the police have access to mechanisms that attorneys don't have. So if I send a subpoena to Instagram and say, send me the images or how somebody was logging in or how often they were logging in, how many friends they had at the time. If I send that a subpoena to Instagram, they're not going to listen to me. But if the police send that subpoena to Instagram, Instagram's going to provide them back with a full report, show all the images and how often the perpetrator was actually accessing Instagram and those other social media accounts. And then, as always, for the civil side of it, that's where you need to contact an attorney. There's only a 1-year statute of limitations from the time the person finds out about the image being published. So let's say that an image today was found on the internet. The person only has until this time next year in order to pursue that civil claim. Otherwise, it's forever lost. And so that's the biggest challenge that we're seeing is somebody will come and say, oh, well, 2 years ago, I had images that were published. One of the most egregious cases we had was where a family member was actually creating AI images in order to damage her own child's reputation. So we see this from, strangers creating AI images all the way over to actually family members trying to damage their own child's reputation.
AI is obviously relatively new technology. We've seen the rise of ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and all of these services over the last couple of years. One of the things as an outsider watching the legal system play out, not only here in North Carolina, but we see this in a variety of other states and even at the United States Supreme Court, Melissa, is that the law can sometimes, especially with new technology, take a pretty significant amount of time to catch up as to what's going on. There are still lawsuits dealing with things as it relates to the internet and social media and technology that have been out there for now more than 20 or sometimes even 30 years that the court still kind of battles with. How do we handle this stuff? This is relatively new territory. I would imagine on the AI front, all of this stuff is brand new within the court system. What's that process been like?
Yes. Thank goodness when it comes to this digital harm statute that the General Assembly enacted, it actually was very forward looking. So even though it was enacted several years ago, they were forward looking enough to include AI generated images. What we're seeing now is that, for example, the North Carolina State Bar is finally giving attorneys guidance on how to use AI, number one. If we use AI and we're able to save time, are we still able to charge as much as an attorney would have charged to produce that document? So all those different challenges. And so again, we've been very blessed here in North Carolina that our General Assembly has been forward looking when it comes to AI. But now we're seeing the professional organizations starting to weigh in as well. And like you said, they're way behind the curveball on this. Attorneys have been using this for at least 2 years now. Most attorneys in the past 6 months, you're seeing attorneys buy into the AI models, and it's starting to be integrated even into our software systems that we use, our client management software systems. It's starting to be integrated. So we're kind of waiting for the courts to respond back. We've seen some courts actually sanction attorneys for citing hallucinating cases and things like that. But here in North Carolina, we haven't seen any sanctions yet. And a lot of that has to do with, again, not a lot of attorneys are using AI, but also the state bar has just started to give guidance for attorneys.
Yeah, and we've seen relatively recently here in North Carolina the push towards the e-court system, and I know there's been some problems with that. We've heard those complaints. We won't dive into that rabbit hole here on the program. This is a common problem with government, I guess, Melissa. When you've got brand new technology that's coming onto the scene, there's always going to be this lag period or this lag time, and hopefully they get it right whenever they get around to it.
Yes. Again, the biggest thing with these sorts of cases is if there is a problem, if you do suspect any sort of violation, suspect a crime, is getting the police involved as soon as possible. Because, I mean, as you know, Nick, with your background, evidence, digital evidence expires so incredibly quickly. So if you're trying to get cell phone data or images that have been deleted online, trying to preserve all that evidence for a case is sometimes very challenging. Again, the reason why it's important to get the police involved as soon as possible if you suspect something afoot.
Let's keep this on the technology front for a second. You mentioned that some of your customer management system or your CRM systems are starting to get some of these AI tools in there. As you're working through this and working with the other attorneys that you've got there in the office, do you guys have a healthy level of skepticism as it relates to some of this stuff as it's being implemented?
Yes. And so, for example, many of the software systems are trying to integrate an automatic reply to your emails. And some of the replies, because we've messed around with it just to see how it would work, some of the
Sure.
replies aren't accurate at all. And many of them are so incredibly long in their explanation that there's no way the other attorney on the other side would read how long the response is. Instead of my response just being yes, no, court appointed, court reporter is approved. It gives a very, very long explanation. And then when it's replying to clients' emails, many times it's missing what the client is actually getting at. So if I get a client's response that says, the kids weren't returned on time, they came home and they were dirty, the homework wasn't done, things like that. The reply back from AI is addressing, well, talk with the dad about bathing the kids, talk with the dad about homework. That isn't what the client is actually asking. The client is actually asking, what is the legal remedy here? And so AI doesn't understand, oh, we need to file a motion in court. So the response back to the client needs to be addressing, what are the legal remedies that we're going to be able to do? We need to file the motion in court. We need to calendar it, and we need to set an appointment for you to get into the office. So AI, again, is great, but like you said, we're very skeptical of it. And just, again, it's a tool we're using right now, but you have to babysit it quite a bit.
Yeah, I've had some interesting automatic email drafts generated by AI over the last couple of months that I'm very fortunate hit that draft folder before they are sent out. So we talked a little bit about some of the concerns here as it relates to online digital harm. Do you see any other issues moving forward as for regular everyday people as it relates to AI that are going to have to be dealt with by the courts in the semi near future?
We haven't seen anything recently, but something that we were seeing in other parts of the country, not here in North Carolina, is that there are false accounts that are being set up, or people are using AI in order to generate posts and things like that. So we're seeing, and we've always referred to these sorts of accounts as like stalker accounts. They're social media accounts that are set up just for the sole purpose of stalking. So we've seen that in other states, not here in North Carolina yet, but AI is being used a lot to generate those posts.
How about like from an evidence front? How do you handle something like that? Like, hey, here's all these Facebook posts, Melissa, that a disgruntled an ex-employee of a business made. Those posts may not necessarily be real because you can literally just go into an AI agent and say, put this picture, put this person's name, here's the content of the post. How do you deal with something like that?
Yes, we actually ran into that recently where somebody had marked out and it told AI, go through and remove all my ABCs from, that alcohol store, remove all my ABC purchases, and then redraft the documents. And so in discovery, documents were served on us, and we knew they could not be accurate because we had other evidence to contradict it. And it turned out that he had dropped everything into AI and had scrubbed his bank records trying to get rid of all those purchases. So we do have challenges like that. But again, we've had people back before AI, back in the older days, we had people using whiteout in order to do things like that. Now it's just much more sophisticated. So it's the same sort of thing. Just keep an eye out, double checking your evidence and cross-referencing, because that's the way we caught this particular case, was through cross-referencing.
Melissa, some great insight and information on this kind of blooming technology sector. Tell us about some of the other things going on over at the law group, some of the services that you provide here across the state of North Carolina, and reiterating again why folks should reach out if they've got legal questions or challenges.
Sure. Thanks so much, Nick. So we're a full service law firm here in Eastern North Carolina. Like I mentioned, we handle cases over in Mecklenburg as well. We handle cases up in Wake County. It just depends what sort of matter it is, but we do handle the revenge porn cases. We handle a lot of family law cases, especially high conflict cases or those with very complex issues. We also handle real estate, and like you mentioned quite often with your real estate closing, 5-6 years ago now, we helped with your real estate closing, refinances. We do criminal work, so criminal defense, like the traffic tickets, drug trafficking, and things like that. And then we also handle estate planning, people looking forward in their lives and trying to go ahead and get everything that's set up for their families. So when they pass, they know exactly where their assets are going to go and that sort of thing. So yes, more than glad to help anybody who needs the help, and they just need to phone us.
You can reach Melissa by visiting her website, lawgroupnc.com. You can also give them a call at 910-251-6088. We not only appreciate her time here on the program today, but her continued support here of The Nick Craig Show. Some very interesting stuff there with Melissa Gott from the law group about what is going on in the AI realm and the AI sector as it relates to the legal system. Some of the concerns, you just imagine the situation unfolding where you're starting with AI, starting with artificial intelligence. So you think maybe that's the best route to go. And by the time, unfortunately, as Melissa highlighted, that a customer or a client of hers reached out and said, hey, I've got a problem here. I need some help. The statute of limitation had already been passed. The documents were filed incorrectly or inaccurately, and there was, frankly, at that point, nothing that could be done. So just like with everything else, we see a healthy level of skepticism when using some of these brand new tools and not relying on them wholeheartedly when you're talking about very serious things like, of course, some sort of a pending legal challenge. We appreciate the insight and information from Melissa, and of course her continued support here of the Nick Craig Show. All right, that's going to do it for a Thursday edition. Don't forget, if you miss any portion of the program, you can check out the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website, nickcraig.com. The program streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and is also heard weeknights 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your Thursday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.